thoughts are. So we're
I didn't know that, by the way. I'm a little disappointed about that.
I know.
I expected him to go off.
Oh, but trust me, you're gonna get a lot of him.
Disappointed.
Y'all all gonna get a lot of. If y'all watch, turn on to the stream. Go to the stream right now, Colin. If you go to ILP Podcast YouTube channel and go to the stream, watch it right now. So the king has thoughts.
Okay, cadets, I want y'all to get ready. Iron Lords Podcast fatigue gear is in session. Now, sit down and let's assess what just happened. The opposition has just foobarred themselves. That's right, you heard me right. Foobarred themselves. We have seen a terrible show. We were preparing for the worst. And what we got absolutely nothing. It was a light drizzle. So I want everyone to hold the line and prepare for June. Oh, June can't come too soon. Pause. So remember, people, hold the line and do not foobar yourselves like the opposition did. That was absolutely disgusting. You thought Spider-Man could save the day? I say no way. Did you see what happened when the opposition tried to do games of a service? Smelled like poo. Absolute poo. So all you spineless jellyfish that left the ranks, stay where you are. Enjoy that. You are foobar. Yeah. Well, how'd you like that show? It's definitely fantastic. Now, I know a lot of guys is out there complaining, but come on, man. I gave you Spider-Man. Don't you buck up on me. Do not buck up on me. I gave you some games of a service. I showed you some trailers. You got Bubble Bobble 2, the remix. Fantastic stuff. And from what everybody says, IGN told us it was a near perfect show. IBM is on program. Everybody needs to be on program. If you're not on program, I need you to go to our brainwashing camps so you can see exactly what I want you to see. Now, I want you to see a perfect 10. And I want you to know and love Spider-Man. And I showed you a handheld. Now, I don't want nobody complaining about the battery life. You're home. When it dies, plug it back in and get back in the game an hour later. 3-4 hours, you shouldn't be gaming that hard anyway. We know that y'all need your Twitter time. So I made sure there was 3 to 4 hours in intensive games so you can get back to Twitter, playing Twitter like you like the most. And I'm going to tell you, we're making big bucks here. You guys pre-order Spider-Man at an alarming rate. You guys, I appreciate every last one of you. Stay brainwashed. And I heard the opposition telling people to hold the line. Well, I'm going to tell you to hold the lie. Hold the lie alive. Ha ha. Don't you buck up on me. Don't you buck up on me.
So yeah. Yeah, King made his presence known. Obviously he has his thoughts and his opinions, and we got to get into the rest of this panel. You know what I'm saying?
The lie.
But yeah, definitely hold something.
What the PlayStation is, you're not supposed to hold the line. You're supposed to hold the line.
Salute the King for always letting us know how he feels.
What does he call the second one?
Buck. That's Buck. Yeah. That's the Buck character. That's the rich
Buck, yeah.
The rich tycoon PlayStation owner who doesn't care about gamers' feelings, so to speak. Anyway, moving on. We got some esteemed guests. Let's get right into it. It's Addict's topic, but I'll set it up for him. So yeah, obviously the PlayStation Showcase Aftermath. We've had time to assess, and I want to actually start off with Bad Bit because I haven't talked to him in a while. I haven't talked to Bad Bit in a while. I need some trophy room assessment right quick. You know, now that it has time to settle, you know, what are your thoughts on the PlayStation Showcase?
Man, it's been a crazy few days of just me kind of coming to grips with what I saw. Because on one hand, you know, I said this on the trophy room this week. If this show was a Jeff Keighley joint, this was a great show. There's like a lot of games that I'm interested to play. Like, you know, Alan Wake 2 looks fantastic, right? Like Assassin's Creed looks phenomenal. Can't wait to play both of those. But when it comes down to how do I feel as a PlayStation show, I can't help but feel like this this felt like an obligation to partners rather than them wanting to put out a good show. Like there was a lot of third-party representation. Again, a lot of games I'm really, really into. But when it comes to the question I feel like we all had walking into this event, which is what's after Spider-Man, we still walk out of this going, what's after Spider-Man, right? Like Fair Games, the logo aside, seems interesting. I hate that I have to read it through a blog post. I would have loved to hear like Jade or someone on that team like talk about what this game is, because when you hear it or read it, it sounds interesting. I have no idea what Concord is. Helldivers, okay, looks like a fun time, but other than that, like, what is PlayStation's 2024 looking like? And is it them having to rely on third-party partners or second-party partners to push it through? I don't know. So as a fan, I can't help being let down by a 600 plus weight of what's the next PlayStation thing to get excited for. So to me, I just felt like as a PlayStation show, this was like the second best state of play I've ever seen. Right? Like I feel like the state of play in September was fantastic. Like Rise of Ronin, where was that game? Stellar Blade, where is that game?
Amazing game, yeah.
Right? And so to me, I'm just left as a PlayStation fan disappointed. As a gamer who's going to be probably playing all these games that they showed, I thought it was a great showcase. But again, not a PlayStation one. So at the end of the day, I can't help but be kind of let down.
Okay, so just really quickly, if we're doing 1 to 10 scale, like what would you give it currently?
As a showcase itself of games that I'm interested in, a 7. Okay. If I'm thinking about this as a PlayStation showcase, thing that's supposed to represent the future 1+2 years of PlayStation. I mean, I saw that Spider-Man stuff and I loved it. And if y'all know me, I'm very biased when it comes to Spider-Man.
Of course.
So I give it about like a, I know, right? I give it about like a 5 or 6 on the PlayStation front. Now Days divorced from it. So again, good showcase is not a good PlayStation one.
Okay. No, fair enough. I hear where you're coming from. All right, let's get the Viper. Let's get Cobra Commander himself. Got stuck in a little secret, but I don't know if his thoughts have changed since then. So now that you had a couple more days to settle, like, what's your thoughts on the PlayStation Showcase right now?
Yeah, well, it was fun. Well, I guess it's not even fun. It just is what it is. Like the advantage of doing a show like ours, where we don't do live streams, I'm no longer in media, so I don't have to write anything, is that we kind of just get to react and then we get to back off. Right. And it's actually one of the reasons I'm not really on Twitter anymore. I just promote things. So people don't really tweet at me very much anymore, but I noticed a lot of people were tweeting at me. So I clicked on it. That's when people were asking me to be on the show. So we talked to each other via text and I was happy to do that. But I actually got to kind of just assess it in a vacuum. I sat on my recliner. My fiance was next to me. We watched it on TV. I was taking notes. We were going to go right into sacred symbols afterwards. And I was a little surprised by how negative people were about it. And the more I think about it, the more it really encapsulates. It's like what happened to Redfall, kind of.
Okay.
Like, is Redfall the worst game of all time? I highly doubt that.
No.
You know? And I just feel like everything's either the best or the worst.
Right.
Like, you either want it to be all for you or you can't really see any perspective of what the company was trying to do. So as I actually agree in that for me, I kind of play strange games, right? Like I like my shooters, I like my first party games and all of that, but I play a lot of turn-based games, a lot of role-playing games, a lot of Japanese games. There really wasn't anything there for me whatsoever. But in like kind of a vacuum, when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, I bet you the audience is going to be pretty stoked that we see what Haven's working on. I bet you the audience is going to be pretty stoked that we see what Firewalk's working on, et cetera, and so on. And so when I go on to our Discord or I go on to Patreon, and then we're recording, so I'm going on, and then as we're going, I'm going on PlayStation blog, right? And I'm looking up things. I'm like, all right, so what is this PvP? Go into the comments. Everyone hates everything, right? Yeah. Go to the Discord. Everyone hates everything. Go to the Twitter feed. Everyone hates everything. And I'm like, I don't think it was that bad. Like, it wasn't great. I think you can argue it wasn't even good, depending on your perspective. But I do think that there's like a space between. You know, I feel like I wanted to say this because I feel like this was part of the strategy, and I don't know, but maybe you guys can tell me if you think I'm onto something.
Let's go.
They released a 38-page document for their fiscal year 2022. So Sony split into 6 sections, as I'm sure a lot of people know, and PlayStation is one of those silos.
Yep.
It's called Games and Network Services. They released a 38-page document on this, and here's what they said. And I mean, they said a lot of things, but there's just certain things where in fiscal year 19, 12% of their revenue, or I'm sorry, 12% of their investment was in games as a service. Fiscal year 23, so the one we're in now, 55% of their investment will be in games as a service. Fiscal year 25, so that's 2 years from now, 60% of their investment will be in games as a service. Investments by new IP versus old IP. In fiscal year 19, only $1 in $5 that Sony spent on development was spent on new IP. That's now 50-50 and moving upwards. And so what I say by that is I look at it and I'm like, I kind of see what I think they were trying to do, or what they thought that they were trying to do. Certainly, as was said earlier, there are a lot of third-party things in here and deals. Foam Stars looks
amazing.
Such a blatant ripoff. I can't even believe it.
It looks phenomenal.
It is Splatoon.
Nintendo's lawyers will be at the ready.
And I gotta say, that particular game made me want to talk about Square Enix much more than I even wanted to talk about Sony, because you would wonder how much of a glutton for punishment this company can possibly be by making games as a service, whether it's Babylon's, publishing Babylon's Fall, Avengers, Outriders, which I love. Outriders was arguably my game of the year when it came out. I fucking love that game.
Great.
But it's so that was weird. But I think overall it was fine. And I wrote down some stats that I thought were interesting. 34 games in 70 minutes. Certainly big complaints were lots of CG. Yes. Not a lot of gameplay. Yeah. I think the biggest problem was the lack of a Spider-Man date. Although my kind of
Tony Ty kind of broke the news on it, Colin. He said it starts in August. The marking for that. Heavy. And my personal theory on this is that they're going to bundle it with the new PlayStation and the new model, and they don't know when that's going to be ready. I also think that they don't want to there's so much velocity in the old sales right now. I think they're kind of afraid. So I think they were in between a rock and a hard place. It would have been cool to get a date for Helldivers 2, but I personally I went to Fair Games' and I'm going on and on. I'm sorry, but I went to Fair Games' YouTube, and people hated it, right? Like everyone hates that game. I'm like, it definitely has that Ubisoft stench, which makes sense because it's a Ubisoft game essentially. That team is basically a Ubisoft team. Concord, we don't really know what that is. 70s vibe, very cool.
They ain't let us know anything about it. They literally just showed like the thing in the burger. I was like, what is this about?
Yeah. So for me, it's like, but then I went to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was brought up earlier. Spider-Man 2, and actually Push Square just wrote about this, and I went and looked. So on PlayStation, they have 7.5 million views on that trailer already, with 374,000 thumbs up and 9,000 thumbs down. 9.2 million on Marble's YouTube channel, 388,000 thumbs up, 7.6 thousand thumbs down. Phantom Blade was a huge thing too. 1.7 million views, 84,000 thumbs up, 1.6 thousand. So like when people say it's like, that was the fucking, I'm sorry, you guys don't curse here. That was the worst thing ever. Sorry about that. That was the worst thing ever. I'm like, I don't know about that. I've been in the industry for a long time. There were worse E3 conferences than that. There were worse, I don't know. So I just feel like it's somewhere probably in the middle. Okay. I've heard from people that I know, and I think it's fairly obvious that there will be another showcase later in the year. I assume it will be, more focused on some of these games that are rattling around, but
like a future game showcase, like they branded it the first time around.
Yeah, something like this, and maybe just even market it as first. And they don't like using the term second party; they just like to pretend everything is first party. But really, like mature and get those games out of there. But there are a lot of things that I was reading into it where I'm like, where is the room for the middle? When I was watching this, I'm like, I just don't see it this way. My audience really sees it this way. It seems like the hardcore PlayStation audience really sees it this way. But as I kick it back to you guys, I ask you, what's this going to change? Nothing. Well, PlayStation 5 is still going to sell enormous amounts of units. Spider-Man 2 is still going to sell 10 million copies in a few days. Like all these. So it's like, to me, it's very online.
It's a small blemish on like a record they've been on.
What I will push back on, Colin, and I want to ask you this, is that what about the fact that the wait, right? We've had the 2 years, so to speak, and the fact that there hasn't been, it's been pretty, we have State of Plays, things like that. But the fact that there really hasn't been any significant, and then obviously the moniker of Showcase. And historically, PlayStation, let's be clear, like they have put on amazing showcase, like the showcase of dreams, grown men crying, announcements of games that you couldn't even.
Yeah, I was there in person. It was a very interesting thing. Yeah.
So,
but I'll also remind people of that last E3, what was pretty bad.
True.
Anyway, go on.
But it's just like the standard has been set so high, right? So do you internalize that as us, the gamer, putting too much pressure or based on what we're used to them, or just, hey, that it was okay, but it wasn't as bad as people say? But I think a lot of the main discourse I'm saying is that people waited for so long and they felt disappointed in conjunction with not only that, a lot of CGI, no actual gameplay, no actual release dates.
One first-party game that actually had gameplay.
Right. So I think it's a combination of those things. But I'm curious to see specifically about the 2 years. My question for you is really about the, being that they've been away for a while and then come back. If you see, maybe you can understand on that side why the base is so kind of like virally upset with this.
I definitely understand that, dude. Trust me. I kind of never fall into the hardcore PlayStation camp of what people feel. For instance, I thought God of War was great, but I didn't think it was like the best thing I've ever played. I thought Horizon was way better than God of War personally, right?
Yeah,
like I'm always in like kind of a weird space, right? I've been in the PlayStation space for a long time, but I'm not quite your Mark, where it's like you can be like, this is the guy, right? And that plays everything and does everything. I'm like, I don't know about that. I have kind of a weird taste, so I do try to take that into account, which is why I try to look at things more objectively. I think I look at things from Sony's perspective, and I don't. They probably are a little surprised. In fact, I think that they definitely are surprised by the feedback. I've talked to some people at the various studios. I congratulated some of my friends at Insomniac for Spider-Man 2, which looks absolutely insane. I mean, insane.
Absolutely.
That the presence of that game alone, I think, makes it can't possibly be bad, and especially when it's 70 minutes long, and so it's like that's literally 1/7 of what they showed. So I don't know. I think Sony. I think Sony's perspective right now, and I think this is why the Activision deal, like why they're so engaged in it, is that according to the documents I was reading, they only plan on releasing 2 first-party games a year.
That's what it looks like.
They say that straight up. That's all they want to do. They say at least 2 first-party games a year. So that's 2 first-party games a year. So when you look at things, it's like, okay, they don't really want to have this release schedule. I think they're much more, frankly, focused on getting like Honkai Railstar, or whatever the hell that game is called, that Genshin Impact thing over to PlayStation, where they make hand over fist money on it over and over and over again. It's the same reason why they're so concerned about Activision leaving. So I think they just look at it and they say, like, people are going to freak out. They have a right to freak out. You're absolutely right. From a hardcore PlayStation fan, dude, I want to know what all these guys are working on too. I want them to talk. I heard some interesting rumors and things. It was cool to see Helldivers and Arrowhead reemerge after 8 years and all of those kinds of things. But at the same time, I just think we have to explore the middle ground. And it really does remind me of what Xbox just recently went through with Redfall, where it's like, dude, it's just looking at it, it's not the worst game of all time. Like, there's no way that the way you're talking about this is actually realistic for what the game actually is, whether people like it or not. And so this falls somewhere in the middle. I think, I just think based on the data I was telling you, people have to get used to PlayStation saying this kind of stuff. They are interested in being in this space.
Save that thought for our next topic, because I got some very distinct questions to ask you next time. But I'll jump in, and I want to open it up to our guests, though.
I think that's where it is. Like, there has to be room for the middle ground. It's right. Like, we cannot go at Sony for the stuff that we've been seeing Microsoft do forever, right? Where it's like, Game Pass, that you have a lot of those smaller games on Game Pass. They do make their way into big showcases in ways that I personally don't necessarily like. But I do think it is something that you said in the past as well, Colin. I think it kind of holds true on the PlayStation side, but for different reasons, where you say Game Pass has taught Xbox players not to buy games, right? And I think the expectation on the PlayStation side has kind of taught some of the PlayStation base, right? Maybe perhaps the loudest ones in the PlayStation base, that anything that doesn't look like a Horizon, that doesn't look like a God of War, anything that doesn't look like a Last of Us is inferior. And that, being that has been kind of the company line all the way from the PS4, it's difficult for them to sort of accept that this is a new reality. I absolutely think this is a new reality. I was just surprised that they didn't make an attempt to hide it as much as I thought they would, with, interspersing more of these sort of, PvP games and service games with their bigger titles. For me, it's a narrative thing, and how true that is, and how true, narratives are created and die every single day. But at the end of the day, it just feels like the narrative that a PlayStation hardcore player that loves what PlayStation became in the PS4 generation, this is completely opposite to that. Yeah. And there's that fear that this is what they are moving forward. And I think it's more than a fear. Like you said, it's the truth. And we're going to see more and more of it trickle its way. They're telling you. I just sort of think that it's weird, because in the past we've accused Jim Ryan of saying things that weren't true or whatever, or not understanding the business, just caring about the business side of it and not, the face that you have to put to fans and whatever. But it's funny, because he has sort of been on that line where he knows the pop that the big bangers get. And here, it sort of seems like they went into this and didn't read the room and realized that too much of this, without the bangers around it, was going to get this reaction. And I mean, in a way, I can't say I kind of commend them, because they sort of jumped in feet first and they're telling you what it is. And they're telling you you're going to see more of this.